On a chilly winter evening in San Francisco, the fog rolled over the Golden Gate Bridge, giving the city an ethereal, dreamlike quality. The soft glow of streetlights reflected off the slick pavement, and the scent of freshly baked bread wafted from corner bakeries. Nestled in the heart of the Mission District stood an unassuming yet beloved cafe called Ilara's Table. Known for its cozy atmosphere and hearty meals, the place had become a haven for locals seeking comfort and connection. At one of the corner tables, 25-year-old Jasmine Bennett hurriedly wiped down the surface, her dark hair pulled back into a loose ponytail. A struggling musician and part-time waitress, Jasmine had been working double shifts to make ends meet. Her dream was to save enough money to record her first album, but life had other plans. Her brother, Michael, had been diagnosed with a rare illness, and the medical bills had mounted faster than she could keep up with. The bell above the door jingled, pulling Jasmine out of her thoughts. She glanced up and froze. Walking in, wearing a long black coat and a scarf wrapped loosely around his neck, was none other than Keanu Reeves. His presence seemed to slow time. Even the usually bustling cafe grew quieter. Jasmine quickly gathered herself, smoothing her apron. She walked over, heart pounding, and greeted him with a practiced smile. "Good evening. Welcome to Ilara's Table. I'm Jasmine, and I'll be your server tonight." Keanu smiled back, his eyes kind. "Thank you, Jasmine. It's good to be here." She led him to a quiet booth in the corner, away from the prying eyes of curious patrons. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" she asked, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. He pondered for a moment. "I'll take your recommendation. Our house hot chocolate is a favorite," she suggested, her eyes lighting up. "Hot chocolate it is," he agreed, his smile widening. Jasmine returned with the drink, carefully placing it in front of him. "Have you decided what you'd like to eat?" "The chicken pot pie sounds comforting." "Excellent choice," she nodded, scribbling it down. "I'll get that right out for you." As she walked back to the kitchen, whispers filled the cafe. Some customers discreetly pulled out their phones, trying to snap a photo. But Keanu seemed unfazed, content to enjoy his quiet evening. Returning with his meal, Jasmine noticed something in his demeanor, an almost imperceptible sadness. Curiosity tugged at her, but she reminded herself to stay professional. Instead, she focused on her usual warm hospitality. "Everything look all right?" she asked, placing the dish before him. He nodded, taking a bite. "This is perfect. Thank you." Throughout the evening, Jasmine checked in periodically, ensuring he had everything he needed. They exchanged small talk, and Keanu's genuine interest in her stories made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in years. He asked about the cafe, her favorite dishes, and the music playing softly in the background. "Do you play any instruments?" he asked suddenly, catching her off guard. She hesitated before answering. "I do, actually. I'm a musician, but it's been a while since I've performed." His eyes sparkled with genuine interest. "What kind of music do you play?" "Folk and indie mostly," she replied, her voice softening. "I'd love to hear it someday." Jasmine's heart fluttered. Maybe one day. As the evening wound down, she brought the check to his table, placing it discreetly in front of him. "No rush at all," she said, her voice kind. Keanu thanked her, pulling out his wallet. He paused, pen in hand, before writing something extra. Folding the receipt, he stood up. "Thank you for the warm meal and even warmer conversation, Jasmine." "The pleasure was all mine," she replied, a genuine smile on her face. After he left, Jasmine returned to the table to clear it. When she unfolded the receipt, her breath caught. A $1,000 tip on a $40 bill. But it wasn't just the money that stunned her. It was the note beneath it. "Jasmine, never stop sharing your light. The world needs your music. With love and hope, Kr." Tears welled up in her eyes. For months, she had felt like she was drowning, struggling to keep afloat. This single act of kindness felt like a lifeline. Her coworker, Marco, noticed her standing still, tears streaming down her face. "Jasmine, are you okay?" She nodded, showing him the receipt. Marco's eyes widened. "Wow, that's incredible." Word spread quickly among the staff, and soon the entire cafe was buzzing. The head chef, Lucia, came out, wiping her hands on her apron. "What's all this about?" Jasmine handed her the receipt. Lucia's eyes softened. "If that doesn't restore your faith in humanity, I don't know what will." Customers caught wind of the story, and a few approached Jasmine, asking what had happened. "Ever humble," she simply said. "Just a kind gesture from a kind person When her shift ended, Jasmine walked out into the cold night air, the note clutched in her hand. She wandered through the quiet streets, lost in thought. The fog hung thick, muffling the city's usual noise. Passing a bus stop, she noticed a homeless man shivering on the bench. Without hesitation, she approached him. "Would you like some hot food?" she asked gently. He looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude. "That would be amazing," she nodded, turning back towards the cafe. "Wait here." Returning with a warm meal, she handed it to him, her heart full. "Everyone deserves kindness," she said softly. As she walked home, she felt a shift within her. Keanu's words echoed in her mind, reminding her that even in the darkest moments, light could be found. Jasmine walked home, the weight of the evening still settling in. The soft crumpling of the note in her hand anchored her to the moment. The quiet streets of San Francisco stretched out before her, fog drifting like silent whispers. Each step echoed Keanu's words, "Never stop sharing your light." Her small apartment, tucked away above a laundromat, felt different tonight. Less like a cage of unpaid bills and unfulfilled dreams and more like a sanctuary. She sat at her worn wooden table, spreading out a notebook filled with half-written songs and unfinished lyrics. The candlelight flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Keanu's words resonated, pulling her back to the core of why she loved music. She picked up her old, weathered guitar. It had been weeks since she played. The calluses on her fingertips had softened. Her fingers hesitated before pressing down on the strings. The first chord hummed, shaky but alive. She began to sing softly, a song she'd been writing for her brother Michael. The lyrics poured out, raw and unfiltered. "When the world's weight feels too strong, I'll be the light to pull you along. In the silence where shadows stray, we'll find our song, we'll find our way." Tears welled up as her voice filled the room. For the first time in a long time, she felt connected to something deeper. She played late into the night, lost in melodies and memories, until sleep finally claimed her. The next morning, Jasmine woke to a buzzing phone. A missed call from an unknown number and a voicemail. She sat up, heart racing. "Hi, this is Emma from the Corner Music Hall. I heard you've got some talent. A friend of a friend passed along your name. We've got an open mic night coming up, and I'd love to put you on the list. Call me back if you're interested." She nearly dropped the phone. The Corner Music Hall wasn't just any venue. It was the venue where many local musicians got their start. But doubt crept in. Was she ready? Could she really stand on that stage? She called back, her voice trembling. "Hi, Emma. I'd love to perform." "Great." Emma's voice was warm. "We'll see you Friday night. Bring your best." Friday arrived faster than she expected. Jasmine stood backstage, nerves coiling in her stomach. Her brother Michael, frail but smiling, sat in the front row, his presence a beacon of strength. The room buzzed with energy, the crowd filled with artists and dreamers. Jasmine's name was called, and she stepped into the spotlight, blinded momentarily by the bright beams. The room fell silent. She took a deep breath, fingers finding their place on the strings. The first note reverberated, and she began to sing. The song poured out, each word a piece of her soul, each chord a heartbeat. She closed her eyes, losing herself in the music. When she finished, the room was silent. Then, applause erupted, thunderous, heartfelt. Tears streamed down her face. Michael stood, clapping the loudest, his eyes shining with pride. From the back of the room, a figure in a long black coat watched, a soft smile on his lips. Keanu, true to his word, had come to hear her play. He slipped out before the crowd could notice, leaving behind a small note with the stage manager. "You were meant for this. Never stop. Keanu Reeves." Jasmine and Michael walked back to their apartment in comfortable silence, the echoes of applause still ringing in her ears. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain. Michael's voice broke the quiet. "You know, Jazz, that song. It felt like Mom was here." His eyes glistened with unspoken memories. Jasmine smiled, squeezing his hand. "She always believed in us, even when we didn't believe in ourselves." Michael paused, his steps faltering. "You're going to change the world, Jasmine. I can feel it." The next morning, an email notification buzzed her phone awake. Half asleep, Jasmine scrolled through until her eyes widened. Subject: invitation to perform. She sat up straight, heart pounding. It was from the Corner Music Hall's owner, inviting her to a showcase for local talent. Industry scouts would be present, an opportunity she never dared dream of. Her fingers hovered over the reply button. Could she handle this? Doubt whispered, but Keanu's words echoed louder. Never stop sharing your light. She accepted. The days leading up to the showcase were a whirlwind. Jasmine practiced relentlessly, pouring everything she had into each note. The small apartment filled with music, some hopeful, some raw with pain. Michael helped where he could, despite his illness sapping his strength. Each day he seemed weaker, but his spirit remained unbroken. One night, Jasmine found him asleep on the couch, her worn-out notebook clutched in his hands. She gently took it from him, brushing his hair back. "Rest, Mikey," she whispered. His eyes fluttered open. "Play me something?" She picked up her guitar, softly strumming the melody of their childhood lullaby. Michael's eyes closed again, a peaceful smile on his lips. Showcase night. The venue buzzed with energy, but Jasmine's focus was on her brother, sitting front row again, paler than ever but smiling brighter. Keanu wasn't in the crowd, but she could feel his presence. As she stepped onto the stage, fear tried to creep in, but it couldn't touch her now. Jasmine sang a new song, one she wrote for Michael. Through the battles, through the rain, every scar, every pain, I'll carry you, you'll carry me. In every note, eternally. When she finished, the room was silent. Then, applause erupted again. More profound, more powerful than before. This wasn't just polite applause, this was connection. Backstage, a scout approached her. "You have something rare, Jasmine. We need to talk." But her eyes searched for Michael. She found him, tears streaming, but pride radiating from his thin frame. That night, as they walked home, everything felt different. Michael's steps were slower. "Jazz, promise me something. Anything. Don't let the world change you. You've got this gift and..." People like Keanu, they saw it. "Now you see it too." Tears filled her eyes. "I promise." He smiled, a fragile, beautiful thing. "Good. Now, let's go home." The following morning, Michael didn't wake up. Jasmine sat by his side, tears streaming but heart full. He had seen her moment. He had believed in her when no one else did, and that belief carried her now. The scout's offer came through, a record deal. Jasmine knew what she had to do. She accepted, not for fame or fortune, but to keep Michael's light alive. Months later, on the night of her first big concert, Jasmine stood backstage, gripping Michael's locket. The venue was packed, the air electric. She glanced at the front row, an empty seat reserved for Michael. But in that emptiness, she felt him. And, just like that night with Keanu, she stepped into the spotlight. Never stop sharing your light. The spotlight illuminated Jasmine, casting her silhouette across the vast concert hall. The crowd roared, but the noise faded as she took a deep breath, steadying herself. She opened her eyes, feeling Michael's presence, his silent encouragement whispering through her. "Tonight," she began, her voice soft but strong, "is dedicated to the person who believed in me more than anyone. My brother, Michael." The audience fell silent. She held up his locket, glinting under the lights. "He taught me that even in our darkest moments, there's light worth sharing." The music started, the familiar melody of the song she wrote for Michael filling the hall. Her fingers danced over the strings, each note a tribute, each word a memory. "Through the battles, through the rain, every scar, every pain, I'll carry you, you'll carry me. In every note, eternally." Tears glistened in her eyes as she sang, her voice rising and falling with raw emotion. The crowd was mesmerized, drawn into her world. For those few minutes, they weren't just spectators. They felt every loss, every dream, every heartbeat. As the final chord echoed, silence held the room captive. Then, the applause erupted, a wave of sound crashing over her. But it wasn't the applause she heard. It was the quiet whisper of Michael's voice, proud and steady. Backstage after the show, the concert manager approached her, eyes wide with awe. "Jasmine, that was beyond words. You've moved everyone here tonight." Jasmine smiled, wiping away tears. "Thank you." An older man in a tailored suit stepped forward. "I'm David Carver. I represent one of the biggest labels in the industry. We've been following you since the showcase." He extended his hand. "We'd like to discuss a future together." Jasmine hesitated. "I'm honored." But, she glanced at the locket, feeling Michael's warmth. "I need to make music on my terms. No compromises." David's eyebrows raised. Then he nodded. "That's the spirit the world needs. Let's talk." Weeks later, at her first album launch, Jasmine stood in the recording studio, listening to the final track playback. It was raw, honest. Every song a piece of her soul. Michael's presence lingered in every note. A soft knock at the door. She turned, surprised to see a familiar face. Keanu Reeves stood there, a gentle smile on his lips. "You made it," she whispered. He nodded. "I wouldn't miss it." "You've come a long way, Jasmine." She felt tears welling up again. "You started it all. That night. It saved me." Keanu's eyes softened. "No, Jasmine. You saved yourself. I just reminded you of what you already had inside." He handed her a small, wrapped box. "For Michael." She opened it, finding a framed photo from that night at the bar. Michael smiling, proud. On the back, a handwritten note. "Never stop sharing your light." Months later, Jasmine's album soared to the top of the charts. Fans from around the world connected with her music, drawn to its raw, emotional honesty. But for Jasmine, it was never about fame. It was about Michael, about the promise she made to carry his light. At every concert, she reserved an empty seat in the front row. For Michael. And every night, as she stepped onto the stage, she felt his presence, his love guiding her. In the end, it wasn't just her music that changed the world. It was the story behind it. A story of love, loss, and the unbreakable bond between two souls who believed in each other against all odds. And as Jasmine stood in the spotlight, she knew one thing for certain. Michael was still with her, and he always would be. Months passed, and Jasmine's fame grew beyond what she ever imagined. Yet, with each performance, each interview, her message remained the same. Authenticity and the memory of Michael. She had become not just a star but a symbol of resilience and raw truth in an industry often accused of lacking soul. One evening, after a sold-out concert in New York City, Jasmine found herself staring out over the skyline from her penthouse suite. The city lights twinkled like stars against the night. She held the locket in her hands, feeling the weight of memories. A knock on the door broke her reverie. Her manager, Carla, walked in, her expression serious. "Jasmine, we need to talk." Jasmine turned, sensing the tension. "What's wrong?" Carla hesitated. "A journalist is planning to release a story about Michael. They found out details about his past. The struggles. They're twisting it to make it look like you're exploiting his memory for fame." Jasmine's heart sank. "That's not true. Michael is the reason I do this." Carla nodded. "I know, but the media loves a scandal. We need to get ahead of this." The next day, Jasmine sat across from the journalist, a woman with piercing eyes and a notepad. Cameras surrounded them in a studio, lights glaring. "Many people admire your music," the journalist began, voice smooth but probing. "But some question the repeated references to your brother. They suggest it might be performative." Jasmine's hands tightened in her lap. "Michael's story is my story. We shared everything, the good and the bad. His struggle is part of who I am. It's not a performance. It's my truth." The journalist leaned in. "Then why not share the whole truth? What really happened to Michael?" Jasmine froze. The air thickened. She felt the weight of the question. "He struggled with addiction," she finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "But that doesn't define him. He was more than his struggles." The journalist pressed on. "Why hide it until now?" Tears welled up in Jasmine's eyes. "I wasn't hiding it. I was protecting him. Even now." The interview aired, unfiltered. The world saw Jasmine's raw vulnerability. Some criticized her, but many more empathized. Social media exploded with messages from people who had lost loved ones to addiction. Fans shared their stories, creating a wave of collective healing. One message stood out. It was a simple note from a young man. "Thank you for sharing Michael's story. I see myself in him. And because of you, I'm choosing to fight." At her next concert, Jasmine walked onto the stage with renewed purpose. The spotlight felt different, warmer. She knew Michael was there. She raised her hands, quieting the crowd. "Tonight, I sing for those we've lost, and for those who are still fighting. You're not alone." The first notes echoed, and the music began. Not just a song but a lifeline, a promise. Each lyric carried the weight of truth, of Michael's spirit, of every soul still battling unseen demons. Jasmine had found her purpose beyond fame. She wasn't just a musician. She was a voice for the forgotten, a beacon of hope. And somewhere, beyond the lights, Michael watched. Proud, eternal. The concert continued, each song carrying a wave of emotion. Jasmine could feel the audience connected to her in a way they never had before. Every lyric, every note, felt like a shared heartbeat. Michael's presence filled the room, not as a shadow, but as a guiding light. As the final song approached, the crowd fell silent. Jasmine stepped to the center of the stage, the microphone trembling slightly in her hand. The soft hum of the guitar began, and she closed her eyes. This song, she paused, voice thick with emotion, is the last song Michael wrote before he left us. It's called Broken Stars. The music began, and her voice soared, raw and haunting. Even broken stars can light the night, their shattered pieces still burning bright. The crowd swayed, tears glistening in countless eyes. As the song reached its crescendo, Jasmine's voice broke but never faltered. She poured her soul into every word, honoring Michael's memory and the countless stories left unspoken. When the final note faded, the silence was deafening. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, a roar erupted. A wave of applause, cheers, and tears. Jasmine stood there, tears streaming down her face, feeling an indescribable connection with thousands of strangers who now felt like family. Backstage, after the concert, Jasmine sat in the dressing room, staring at her reflection. The door opened gently, and Carla walked in. "You were incredible tonight," she whispered. Jasmine nodded, wiping away a tear. "I felt him, Carla. I felt Michael." Carla smiled, her own eyes misty. "He would be proud. You turned his pain into hope for so many people." Jasmine opened her hand, revealing the locket she always carried. "It's time," she said softly. "Time for what?" Carla asked. "To let go, and give others a chance to heal." A month later, Jasmine launched the Michael Foundation, dedicated to supporting young musicians struggling with addiction and mental health issues. The foundation's message was simple. Even broken stars can light the night. In the following weeks, stories poured in. Young people inspired by Michael's story found the courage to seek help. Families reunited. Lives changed. Jasmine continued to perform, but her music felt different. It wasn't just about fame or success anymore, it was about legacy. Every concert, every song, was a tribute to those who fought silent battles, a reminder that no one was truly alone. Years later, Jasmine stood on the same stage where she had once made her breakthrough. The crowd had changed, but the message remained the same. She sang Broken Stars once more, her voice older, wiser, but still filled with the same raw truth. As the final note echoed, she looked up at the sky, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Michael," she whispered, and in the quiet of that moment, among the lights and the echoes, she felt him there. Not as a memory, but as a part of every broken star that continued to shine. The night faded into silence, but Jasmine's song, Michael's song, would live on forever.